Right. Different continent, but more continental. Hava has joined us. Okay, so our three critiques for the evening have joined us. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and get started, and then hopefully we don't have to review anything for people who are arriving. Welcome to Speed Critique. I feel like I should have some sort of like I should be wearing like some sort of like racing outfit with a racing helmet, and then when we start, I'll just take the racing helmet off and I'll be like, "Welcome to Speed Critique." Anyway, this is my attempt at humor. You can tell that I taught for many years because I use cultural references that mean absolutely nothing to anybody in the moment. So anyway, let's see if we can get this popping here. All right, so just to review the rules of play for the artist being critiqued, you get 10 minutes to, limited explanation of your work. So be directed. Your question was cleared, so stick to the plan. Don't go off on tangents. That can be very confusing, and with this amount of time, if you go off on tangents, well, you might get lost in the shuffle there. If you linger on a point or you dominate during the feedback, like the person being critiqued is speaking more than the other people, or it feels like you're not giving an opportunity for feedback, I will mute you. And remember, we can continue the conversation offline as well. So I will be posting the video for the critique into the Proyectos page, and then the commenting will be turned on, and I will include in the page any questions that come up. So for those who are helping with the critique, there's only 20 minutes of feedback for everyone, so be direct and constructive. If you linger or dominate, I will mute you as well. I'll send you a message in the chat first. Focus on the question the artist is asking, so you are not allowed to go off on tangents either. We'll try to keep it focused. If there's more time and there's not, and this is not as large of a group, so it's possible that there'll be more time to ask questions and things too. If you think a question or a statement during the critique, you can also write it into the chat. If you go to the bottom of your window, you should see a chat icon, and you can type your questions in there. That will help keep the flow going as well and reduce some of the overlap of talking that happens with Zoom meetings all the time. So tonight we're going to start with Sahava. Sahava, would you like to come unmute yourself and bring yourself forward? Okay, so Zahava has posed the question. Oh, I see there's an apostrophe missing here. Sorry about that. I'm beginning to use the individual beings as components to create much larger, more complex sculptures and installation. The light has 6 sculptures disconnected so that the piece can be configured in various ways. I'm not sure if it's working. Should I figure out how to connect it as one fixed piece to use for future designs and stuff too? So we'll go into the next slide, which has the question and her images. All right, you have 10 minutes to talk, Zahava.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. I miss my critique group back home. And we haven't been doing Zoom at all. So you may remember that I already created 9 molds of different sizes from 2 feet to 7 feet in length. And I'm actually started working on the second one, 7 foot tall. And each one of them is a piece on its own by itself. But also then I'm using these beings as components to create larger pieces and installations and reliefs in different various ways. So this is the first one that I'm actually using 6 of them in one configuration. As you can see, they stand, they're resin and they stand on that bronze part. I don't want to call it base because it's part of the piece. And so I put them together, and and the one where you see the 6 of them on the very busy floor with other pieces around it, it was at the gallery site in the foundry. So I took it myself, and the foundry owner took it with our cell phone. So it's a very not clean photo, but it's good enough that it shows what my question is. So they, as I said in the written question, they stand by themselves so that they can be 6 separate pieces and also be configured in different ways. But it's a little bit confusing to me whether when I come to a composition, I should solidify the base or something in some way that this is the way they will always be shown. And so this is a question for other pieces as well, which I'm just starting now to develop my designs into creating larger pieces. That's my question.
Awesome. So we'll open up the floor. The images remain up and the question is there. Thank you for your explanation, Zahava. I would start out by asking the question, with all of them separate this way and not one single base, they do just sort of feel like they're clustered together. They don't seem to feel as though there's a purpose to me that unites them necessarily, other than the style of them, and they clearly are from a series. Have you experimented with unifying them by maybe having one base in which the poles can be put into the base and maybe shifted around to create different narratives as well?
Well, I want to be very careful for them not to look like a candelabra, you know, like candles on sticks. I showed it to an artist friend around the holidays in December, and she said, "Oh, they look like a Hanukkah thing." And I said, "Oh my God, you know, that's the last thing I want." And so, yeah.
I think that's a really good point. It would kind of, it could easily look like a candelabra, except for the fact of the scale of it is so much larger than what you would normally see for that too. But
Well, the 4 pieces on the right is an image that the foundry sent to me when they were processing it or working on it to get an okay from me. So I will never show them in a line like that. But I included that photo because it shows really well with the verdigris patina at the bottom how they are configured together. The photo in the middle is called Being 7, and it's actually a piece that I've been showing on its own. And the patina on the bronze is like weathered, like rust kind of a thing.
you know, and then I start to think about how you could manipulate those to create more of an installation feel, but it feels like there needs to be a separate object that unifies them to me. I'm curious what other people are seeing. Go ahead, Anna.
Hi. I really enjoy your pieces, the translucidity, and even if the photo on the left is not as clear, I really like the playfulness with the shadows. And if you're thinking of installation, perhaps work with the lights, and because you can actually see through them, right? They're transparent or not? They're not transparent.
Yeah, you can see through them, except they're very textured. So, but there is mixed media inside usually, so you see that up to a point.
Okay. So I like that it's different sizes. I will stay with this different sizes, so it will be playful with the shadows. I think I really enjoy the shadows, and I enjoy the pieces on the right because they kind of is the softness of the color. It's not finished, or is they're finished like this, the the bottom part?
Well, the bottom part is verdigris, and it was sent to me by the foundry just to get my approval. And so they just show them like that so I can see each one of them individually.
Because I like the color, the bottom color is like more soft and you can see more on the top part. You can focus more on the top part.
That's the true color. This one on the left, it was just a makeshift photo. So there's a lot of debris around and the colors are not okay. And the piece was still, I mean, there are labels on it and so on and so forth. So it was a piece in the middle of putting things together.
Okay.
And the colors are off.
I have a question. Would these be ever shown outside, or is it always interior spaces in different shows that they're hoping to be in?
Well, we're trying to figure it out because the design of these pieces is such that the bottom is very narrow.
Mm-hmm.
Heat can affect it. And so we have been trying, when I say we, it's the foundry and myself, have been trying to figure out a way to make the resin more weather resistant without interfering with the piece. The problem is that if we put a rod inside, metal rod, you see,
Yeah.
put any other, like another resin rod, we tried a glass rod, and that's not strong enough. Yeah,
I think they're, yeah, sorry. I think they're really beautiful, and I know you're continuing. I kind of like them as is, and I think that the other comment that Anna made about shadow and light, obviously that plays a lot of part in it, but if you don't always have control, if you're not there, or if there's limitations at each venue. I like the flexibility of them, and I think that scale makes them not look like just a little decorative item or, you know, some kind of candelabra or something. I think that the varying the scale as well, which is what Anna said. And I like also the playfulness. I think you can play with installation and have more freedom. And if you wanted, you could have, you know, I think the bases are beautiful, but if you wanted, you could have grass or sand, or I've helped people install some shows from people that were away, and they had super elaborate, you know, exact measurements between the pieces and all that kind of stuff. And you just, I think, you know, if you have a particular way, but I like them. And also I think it's I like your work, and I think it's also more affordable, and they stand alone as well. So that's just my opinion. I think that they're kind of good as is, and as you evolve, you can play with how they are. And if even the smaller ones, if you bring the light down lower, it also makes more figures on the background, you know. So I think they're great.
Can I interrupt? Okay. Is my connection okay? Let me know.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I think, I don't know, if you can invest money and time into doing more of these, I would explore different ways to install these, either suspended from a ceiling or clumped together as though like one giant crystal. But if you can't right now, I guess, you know, since we're not talking about the meaning behind it, we're talking about how you can connect it as one piece. If you can at all assemble it as one piece, go for it. If you can't, I mean.
So thank you, everybody. It's very helpful. So I do have designs, and maybe I should have posted those as well. I have sketched some designs. One of them is a totem pole where the metal is only in the center, and then you can hardly see the metal because they're attached in such a way that most of what you see is the pieces themselves. And also there is another component that you cannot relate to because there is not in them yet, which is light. And so there is a totem pole. There is one that it's a spiral, and they're attached to the spiral, and again, the metal will show very little. Then I have a relief, a wall relief, and a mid-room relief that's going to be put, I mean, the material that's going to hold them together is a mesh, like it's a fabric that's made out of metal mesh, and it will be hanging from the ceiling, definitely the middle room one. And then these pieces are attached to it on both sides in a variety of ways.
I also like, it makes me think about, there are a couple other things that it's making me think about. First of all, because resin looks so much like glass, if the surface of the floor that they were sitting on like had some sand or something like that created the space that they're sitting in, that would unify them. But also because you work with resin, maybe thinking about creating like resin-based rocks that could sit on the ground, and then you could light those from underneath as well with LED. So there would be like this sense of light, like a surface that they're all sitting on, and then that would allow you to overlap some of the some of the bases and stuff, and play with the arrangements, and maybe and include more of that element of light that you're playing with in your future sculptures as well too. So, but there's something I remember when I did an artist residency in Michigan many years ago, and there was a glass blowing workshop, and I was fascinated with all the scraps of glass blowing and how they seem to have no value, but like the scraps, all these little beautiful pieces of glass still had like these beautiful color plays and shapes and things. And I started taking all the scraps and just making necklaces and things from them, just because I thought the scraps themselves were so interesting. So I'm curious about like what kinds of remnants come out of the process that might unify it as well.
Well, they're not remnants, but at this point I have maybe 20 pieces that I haven't used yet. And some of them are pigmented and some of them are clear. I tend to like the pigmented ones better. Somebody said something about contrast. I think, Gina, you gave me a lot of information. Thank you. And I agree. I think that with the contrast of the amber color, especially, they show better and differently. Yeah, all great ideas. Thank you so much.
It's definitely the bases, because the figures collaborate beautifully together and activate the space around each other. But then you get to the base, and those square bases I think are too harsh and clumsy. If you would change the shape even, or have what they all sit on more like color, it would interact better. The figures are so sensual and soft, and then you've got these square heavy bases that they're on.
Are you saying like they would interact better as a group, or even?
Yeah, because right now my eye just gets stuck at that heavy bottom, and the squares are all kind of jammed together. But the bodies relate beautifully together, but those square bases don't. So I think the shape of the bottom could be changed to help them interact better together.
Yeah, thank you. The idea behind, I mean, the way they're put together speaks to the message that this work has, that the body of work altogether, which is coming from very solid and clunky world into my belief, my truth, that we're all equal and we're all pure light. And so I created that contrast purposely, but it may be too much, maybe too clunky.
Well, I think when they're individual, that isn't an issue. It's just when you start putting them next to each other, then it feels like the bases are less considered as much as the objects are. Only because, not because like it's intentionally unconsidered, but only because they just look grouped together. There's no connection between them. That's why I made that comment about like if there were like a solid base that like the poles sit into, or I had this image of like a room filled with them, but like there was like this like some sort of dimensional plane in which the poles and the figures emerged from, but the bases were all hidden, and it just like came towards you down to the ground, but there was a sea of all these figures, And then with the lighting that you're talking about that's interior to it, and the way that would cast shadows and stuff, that could be a really engaging room. Like really, it could be quite intense to have those shadows and lights play.
Yeah.
With the absence of the base, like just hiding them in a sense removes that. So.
Right. I can see that.
I was going to say that too. I think you might, I would like to see more of them possibly, but I also definitely vote for keeping them separate because I think there's a lot more options in a space and how you could play with them. I mean, you could try joining maybe like 2 or 3 of them, but I definitely wouldn't join all of them.
What's the motivation you have about the concept of installation as opposed to a show where they're all presented separately in a room? Like,
no, I mean, I am envisioning including sculptures that are individual or 2 or 3 together in some form, and then creating more complex installations and reliefs. Because I'm envisioning my idea of this body of work is to have at least 20 pieces in a room.
Right.
The room is completely dark and the only light is coming out of these pieces. It
also makes me think about the terracotta warriors in China and how important the space that they sit in gives them a context. And because you're dealing with this concept of like humanity too, like even though those figures are so specific and like stylized and clearly of China, they're like that context of putting them in the earth connects them to all of humanity as well. So I think there's something there, like I said, and Gina said, like sand, you know, that could unify it, and that would be the simplest way to do it because then they could be separated and then put back together, and it could be like, you know, a specific style of sand, you know, or rocks, or but I there's something about the ideal of them having their own source of light and being placed in a multiple form in a more considered space, like an entire room full of them or something, that makes it, that's also quite appealing as well. So
yeah, that could be very powerful too. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. This is very helpful.
That could be rendered in Photoshop too. You don't need to necessarily do it
Right.
to have the experience of it, but you could sketch it in Photoshop or have someone sketch it for you.
Right. Right.
Anyone else? Okay, so let's go on. We're going to go to Anna next. Anna, unmute and pop your video on.
Okay. Okay. These pieces are, you know, they come from memories, and the idea is to find these memories in my body. So that's why I draw myself. And I figured that I didn't like the circles in my body. So I explore the circles. And this is my first piece, exploring circular forms. And I'm not so sure that formally, I mean, I have all these feelings and emotions behind the piece, but I would like to know more about the formal aspects of it and how do you perceive it pictorially, and yes.
What scale are these is my first question. I'm just wondering. I mean, digitally they're, I mean, I think they're, yeah.
On the left side is just the texture. On the right side, it's a whole piece, and it's in centimeters. I don't know if you can help me, Michael. It's 120 by 90 centimeters, and so I'm not sure how much in feet.
So
like
that's
3 or 4
90,
feet.
30 2 and 120 would be about 36 inches.
Mhm.
So 30, is it horizontal or vertical?
Vertical, 36
Vertical?
by,
Okay, so it's like a 36 by 32, a little bit larger than a poster.
Mhm.
yes, that's it.
Well, I would never guess that it's working. I mean, it has a real guttural feeling for me, and I think the composition is beautiful and nice. So I'm not, but it's not. I would never guess that it was work about the body. So I don't know if that matters to you. And yeah, so I don't know.
Mhm.
Does that
Yes.
matter, or that I would know that, or?
No, it doesn't matter. It's I have worked abstract for a long time, and going back to the body was kind of difficult. But I like the shapes of this in a way when I see it now, how I see it now. It's like a shape of the body, like a cuddling into an egg form. So now I see it like that way. But I was thinking of perhaps do a drawing in one of them like that, and so it could relate to the body. But yes, it is about it. But yes, you can see it. It's
One
more.
thing that made me think of the body in here is, it may just be the images, but they had kind of a Band-Aid look to them, or like a gauze.
Mhm.
I don't know if that was intentional. But, and then the
Yes.
other thing I thought of is like a wheat paste posters.
It is the idea of the translucent or the veils is how my memories have worked from a long time ago memory, and how I had these veils for a very long time, and suddenly they just start going down. And so yes, the whole idea is how memories have worked in my mind as veils, as suddenly they drop and suddenly they come up and like this. Yeah, so it's
Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, I thought you
no,
paused.
no,
Sorry.
just one thing is that sometimes you see something, but you're not clear what happened, and that's how I see it. These veils where you know something happened, but you're not actually sure. And so at first I wanted to hide everything, and then I started opening up the images behind it.
I do see some opportunity to play with scale a little bit more. Like there's a lot of unity between the scale of all the different shapes. And then there's like, like these areas where there are smaller scale items, and there's very few of them. So I'm wondering if you've played with more of the scale of those circles to have a little bit more variety in them.
Yes, that's a good idea. Yes.
And also the concept of memory for me, I love the veil ideal here too. But my question would be how the addition of one color in one shape might affect that. So I might take this image and go into Photoshop and then play with the color of the one small shape, just to see how that changes the narrative, or how it adds and kind of creates opportunity within the narrative away also. And oh yeah, and Mia said not sure about the rounded shapes, but maybe try tearing them. And last night you showed us some pieces where the circles had been broken into pieces and were interrupted by some of the veiled pieces. And I thought that in itself kind of resolves some of the narrative that I'm not seeing as directly here. Like this is to me, it's a very engaging image to look at. I'd be very curious to see it in a frame and like have something next to it, like you, to see the scale. Like this is the problem with Zoom, is that we lose some of the reference to scale because you know, we can't really tell in this particular instance what the scale is. Mia, do you want to come on and comment, or?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Zahava.
You can go ahead, Zahab.
So Anna, I think that it's a very powerful piece. And I do see that actually I see several figures, not just one. Is that per purpose? Like, do you have within your, oh my God, the bell here. Do you purposely, you had, because the round shapes that I can identify 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sort of insinuate to me like a group, or maybe within the memory, other people come into the piece. I'm not sure.
It's not intentional, but it's really interesting because I know I'm not sure how many people were there. I'm not sure. I mean, I think there were 3. I don't know. It's like it's all not so clear to me yet.
The abstraction does not bother me at all. Like the fact that I don't know necessarily the narrative behind it, you know, doesn't bother me in terms of like viewing this either, even if I didn't know that it was, you know, representational of the human form. Like that doesn't bother me. I do like that there aren't as many strips like interrupting the circles as in some of the other earlier pieces that we saw. I'm also wondering if you can play with the levels by in some of the less transparent pieces, maybe placing other layers below it to elevate it so that there is an exaggeration. And there's something really interesting that happens when the shadows are created as well. And those shadows to me become part of the composition, intentionally or not. So it'd be interesting to see if you can play with those levels a little bit too.
Yes. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes. It's the texture is part of the piece. Yes, but I can really push it and make it more obvious. Yes. Yes. The papers coming out it's intentional.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I especially like the shadow in the center, which is like a burnt sienna color, like a little, yeah, that one. That introduces also the other color that Michael was talking about.
I
What do you
would like
mean?
to say something.
Yes.
Anna, I'm looking at your work and I'm noticing that you're talking about a memory and I think you're associating sound too and creating an image in your head. At least that's my takeaway from looking at the work. And I'm thinking that with Michael's comment about playing with the layers and the value, I think that would be in your favor. And then I forget who just mentioned the burnt sienna, but that reminded me of reflections. And I think that would be really beautiful, maybe incorporating light into your work.
Yes. I like it. Yes. Mm-hmm.
On that note, I have a question about, so to me, I like the work. I think it's compelling and beautiful. I get into a question of like how you would present it. So, you know, like, would you have it in a deep frame? Would you have a black mat sort of isolating it? I mean, that really kind of changes, like, you know, changes the piece for me, like on how it's presented. So that would be a big question that I would have. And do you have ideas about that, or?
Yes, I normally box them like in a frame, like in a box. and the piece comes a little bit like it's in a bed, but not with passepartout. I don't know how do you say it in English. Passepartout, is that? No. Okay.
What was the word?
A mat, a colored mat underneath.
Matt.
Yes. Yeah. It's sort of in a bed, but you don't see the bed, and it's a white background. So because I really like the movement of the paper and how it shadows on the background. So it's kind of pull a little bit from the back, but it's in a box thick enough so you can see the movement of the paper and the texture. But yes,
I recently saw a video. It's a documentary on HBO about Black artists, and this artist. One of the things that he did was he was working with layers like you are, but then he also used the glass, the front of his shadow box, and he would paint it on top of the glass. And that also created a sense of dimension. And it would be interesting to see how like a shape painted on top in one area or something in a different color shifts the narrative and, you know,
yes,
and
yes.
it could be a color, or it could be a skin tone. But
Yes.
it'd be interesting to see that it could be painted on or screen printed on, or
yeah, that's a good idea.
it could even be, you could even Gina could probably speak to this more, but ideally like maybe doing like a fade of a veil pattern on the glass itself. So like it's solid on the bottom and fades out really quickly, or I don't know. But the veil ideal is really appealing. It just, to me, everything feels a little flat at the moment, and that's why I was focusing on the shadows, because that's the only evidence in the photograph, not seen in person. The only evidence that I have of the depth of it is the shadows right now. So that's why I was making the comment about playing with that layering and creating a little bit more space between some of the pieces, so there is more of a definition of shadow.
Yes, definitely. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Any other comments? Gina gives you a celebration icon.
I can't see you, Gina. But you're next.
Next to her name, a little like a celebration emoticon showed up.
And I just had a question about the palette that you're using. Is there a meaning behind it? Like you choosing the colors purposely, or?
Yes, just black and white with a beige of the natural color of paper. And I have different kinds of papers, Japanese papers, that they do nuances of the colors. You can't really see them in the photo. It's the light is not well, and so they look really white some parts, but they're actually very beige, and there's I would like to put a hint of color, like the ochre, the burnt sienna that you expressed, and I put a little bit of blue in this one, but I think I will express a little bit more. I mean, I'm using blank ink, and the black ink and different grades of white ink, black ink, sorry, and white acrylic. So yes, I think I will explore a little bit of color. Yes, but it's on purpose because of the memories that is not quite clear what it's like working from my memory. So that's why the colors. Yeah.
I also think that the metaphor of the colors is really strong, but also like an additional color creates a sense of distance between the memory and the viewer. So, so having like not necessarily a muted color, but like something in there, even as just a small little tiny detail that references reality. So there's like a distance in the time.
Yes.
Too. It's very interesting.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so it's I understand its memory, but also it is very dreamlike.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the color actually might also add a perspective of the artist. So you know, it gives you like an anchor of a place to start from and go to as well. So it's really interesting. Gina, why did you say talk to Kate?
Because
Sorry?
Kate works with her, well, right now she's painting her dreams, and her dreams are reflective of nightmares, and color is very strong in her work, and I feel like she represents a lot of highlights and shadows and a lot of depth, and I feel like they could have a nice conversation about color and layers.
Good point.
And yet they are so different. Their art is so different.
Yes, agreed. Lori says that Japanese paper tears beautifully and will add a gentle depth. So have you experimented with, instead of cutting, actually just tearing the paper too, or?
Yeah, sometimes, yes. Yes, but I will do it more evident. Yes.
I mean, there's like this textural edge that comes when you use the black. And I like the crispness of these too. So, I mean, you know, for you, it's going to be a matter of like intuition and telling like how to balance that out, or to use that contrast as part of the narrative as well. So, like since your circles are so crisp in most of the forms, maybe the linear line or the veil is ripped. So, which also works as a metaphor for like violence and you know, idea of like clothing being ripped or something like that, or you know, maybe the inclusion of a piece of fabric that has a specific kind of memory or something to it, instead of painting a color in, like an inclusion of a pattern of a little piece of fabric or something that could also represent the sort of the youthfulness, innocence as well. Thank you, Anna. We're going to go on to Gina next. Gina is sort of in the same vein. She's asking us to observe the piece and comment on the technical or formal aspects of it, and anything that does not work from the piece. So we'll go to this slide. Gina,
all right. Okay, well, this is just a continuation from a series that I was working on, a larger series with my legs as the subject matter. So right now my work is exploring cycles of shock and states of stress. And so what I do is I collage my drawings, prints, image transfers, all of the things that I've created from my hands. And I will either take photos of them to print them, or I'll use them as printing material. And what I do is then use that as my collage material. And what I'm trying to do is push myself on the side to become more comfortable with technology. So I invested in an Apple Pen, and I'm working with wallpaper designs because I'm really interested in pattern and layering. So that's something that I'm working on, is dimensions and layers, and working on how I can use color, but also kind of also on the side, kind of separate myself from my own, I guess my own feeling behind the work, and make it more of like a graphic. So kind of remove myself from the work. And that's just kind of like a professional strength that I'm trying to create for myself, to know that that's an option, because this is like part of my path also for developing more independence. So this has to do with a lot of the things that's happening with my life professionally. So while it is still digital at this point and very conceptual on the side, it is also removed at this point because I've repeated it so many times. So I would love feedback on the colors, which I haven't mentioned, but I pulled from 90s colorways because I wanted to explore how I can push myself using like balance and rhythm and primaries and just kind of like ins and outs. So yeah, there's a lot there, but it's just kind of my way of having fun with this and making light of this art lab.
Ina, can you tell us the scale of the work?
Yes, so the piece on the right, what that is a giant piece of Canson paper, and that would be like 24 by 36 or 18 by 24. And the linoleum prints on top, that's 8 by 10. So that's just a repeated pattern of UV glow paint. So that wouldn't come through in the digital work, but if you had the piece in person, that cropped image right there would be 11 by 14, or since it's a square, like 14 by 14. And then the wallpaper pieces that you see on the left are like the digital renderings that I would either print onto fabric or whatever, kind of explore patterns. And yeah, just having fun with it.
So the image on the left, but the bottom one, is that the same as the big one, only upside down and multiplied?
Yes.
It's upside down because we're supposed to have one image with only details, and she provided me with more than one image. There's no way. I didn't realize it was upside down until you said it.
Oh, so it's not purposely supposed to be upside down?
No.
Oh, I sent him just so many different combinations of different images, but what I'm actually focusing on is the one in the middle up top. Is the most recent piece, is where I had the original drawings kind of merged together into layers, and I played with the different opacity digitally. So yeah, that one. Yep, the first image that you had. So the one on the, you could just actually go back to your slide, your first slide. Yep, that one. That's the one. So the collage piece is actually the low relief, I guess, 3-dimensional piece that you would use, that I use to layer this digitally. So I made the collage material for the digital collage. So I guess we're critiquing a little bit of both. But I love this one, so I guess, I don't know, whatever you feel comfortable, it's because they're both connected.
So
I
I
think-
have a question.
Go ahead.
I have a question. The bigger piece that you had originally on the right, when the petals intersect, when there are two flowers that the petals intersect, there is a different color that's created or that you put in there, right? And that doesn't happen, or at least I don't see it in the wallpaper piece or the fabric.
Do you want it to be there? Do you think it should be there?
I don't know. I'm going to be honest. At the first, the two ones on the side, like the cut flower on the side that has the red. No, in the big piece, Michael. at the beginning, but the side, the edge, the two cut flowers at the edge that has two colors up here and down below on the right.
Mm-hmm.
First, I thought they were fingers with fingernails,
Mm-hmm.
which
Okay.
threw me like, why would that be there? And then I realized that actually it was petals overlaying and creating a third color between them. Just an observation and a question about it.
The observation I think is really important, Zahava, because what I'm seeing in like this first piece and then what happens here is it's kind of the difference between like printing gift wrap and or fabric for like textile and the artistic expression of like the same. And so I'm a little concerned that you're going in a direction that is becoming a little bit more decorative and less meaningful. And you made a comment about removing yourself from the work, but I think you're the most important element of the work. So I think this is very beautiful. And when I see it, I think I would love to wrap a birthday gift with that. But when I see the one on the right,
Oh my God.
so I think you need to be a little bit careful about all this research you're doing into wallpaper and things because you're starting to create just wallpaper.
No,
Yeah.
that's what I'm, that's, okay. My, I'm exploring, that's what I'm doing.
Right. So
Yeah,
what,
no, I understand the exploration, but there's the technical side of exploring something that still honors the emotional side of what the stories that you're telling and things too. And I know that in the group that we've had different discussions in the time that you've been here about this idea of like, you know, how like narratives about mental illness or, you know, or struggles with mental health and things like that. And like some of us have made comments about like, well, you know, that narrative is in my work, but I don't put it forward because, you know, for different reasons or something like that. But I also think that there's something really powerful in the emotions of your work that starts to disappear a little bit here. And it could just be the form of it being in a square and a sheet like that. I don't know, you know, like there's this organic quality where you have all these different frames, but that also that ideal of like in the overlaps, the colors change and, you know, and the flowers when they overlap each other and they.
Ooh, you know what? That just made me think of something. Because it's a physical thing, it's very saturated, it's very colorful. And I think that, yeah, maybe I should not like remove myself from my work. But the digital one is very, like you said, very less saturated and more removed.
I felt like I kind of agreed with Michael in that way because I just, in the other two, I can see kind of what you said, more of like the playfulness or your hand in it. You took parts of it and manipulated it and drew into it. And then the other one did just look more of like a digitally or like a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So I enjoyed the other. I actually enjoyed the one where it's repeated probably the most because I could just see like the kind of playing with it, going a little, you know, like pushing the boundaries of it, repeating it as many times as you wanted to.
Because part of my process is so what I'm showing you is for the first time is something that I've been doing for my process to actually use as collage material, but this is the first time I'm showing you the digital pieces. So, but as like larger patterns. So I'm wondering like, I'm so happy that you're saying like, yes, it's like, that would be perfect for like a certain kind of a pattern, but sorry, I just completely cut you off.
Can I?
That was my comment. You didn't cut me off.
I agree with everything that, you know, everybody said. I'm more drawn to the larger piece, individual, but I can definitely, looking at your wallpaper or repeated patterns, I can see if you really bring it over the top, like making a whole wall and putting the patterns on objects and sort of almost going crazy, but not literally crazy yourself, and really pushing the boundaries of it, and mixing it with wallpaper and all kinds of stuff. I could see that that would be a really amazing installation, sort of like on this obsessive quality. So with outside the bounds of just a piece of paper or a square or a rectangle. And for me, that would be really interesting. I'm not saying that's where you want to go, but that's something that I could really see sort of expanding and repeating and, you know, and playing kind of on a very large scale.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's
Yeah,
something
that
about
resonates a lot.
there's something about this ideal of this being a wallpaper in a room, and then the work being framed maybe on top of it. That would be a very interesting, engaging space and a way of imagining your process and how the work is playing out. So how
Can
about
I
your,
share something intimate with you
sure.
all? So I guess this is like a confession. I would, you know this, I would isolate myself in my bedroom and my parents would have to go to work and all of this stuff. So I guess this piece has a lot to do with growing up because I was using my childhood photographs. So this critique in a way is really bringing up a lot of emotions for me. It has a lot to do with hanging like posters in my bedroom and like slapping like Bop magazine like centerfolds of you know like boy bands all over my walls, and that's what kept me company and that's what kept me busy and that's what like how I used to collage. So the whole thing of turning this into a larger piece and like installation is really encouraging. So I love this.
Anna, you have your hand up. You had it
Yeah,
up.
sorry. Just hate to interrupt. But Gina, I wanted to say that reminds me a little bit of Andy Warhol. I don't know. He has made a lot of pieces with wallpaper with his pieces. And I was thinking that if you, like, I see that there's a, from like a mountain, it looks like a little mountain or a shape like a mountain on the top. That is, I don't know if it's the same as it is cut the paper on the bottom, but I sort of wish I could see these patterns happening in the same piece. Like, for example, put the blue part on the bottom, or the two black and white flowers on another side, or put this, like, play with the patterns, not with the whole piece, but with separately with different pieces. Like the square, you can put the square with the two flowers, or the square with the red flowers, or move a little bit to the side the central piece, and a little part of the same piece on the right. So play with this idea of the patterns, but in the same. I mean, I'm sure you're doing it, but I feel that
I want to do it. I need to push myself to. I don't have Wi-Fi right now, so I'm like, and I don't want to be at work. So I want to use the Apple Pen to kind of just fuck around with like the pattern and make it a lot more time efficient. So I hear you. I love this that you're saying this.
yes, I think.
Can I ask you a question? What do I do about, I'm like obsessed with this UV glow paint right now. And that comes through because that's also a huge thing in my childhood that I was pulling through for the inspiration for this work. How can I A, photograph it? B, I guess have it also resonate digitally? And like, any suggestions?
I think you're gonna have to go with video.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't, I mean, it's kind of like Esther's work. You know, you don't understand the ephemeral nature of it until you see it in video. So the technology exists for a reason, and it would allow you to shift the light and show that element of it. And also, I was going to say, I think as we continue to talk about this concept of installation, I honestly think that that's where your work needs to go. I think the frame is limiting you. And in some ways, you don't need the frame. And like, see how the flowers just sort of float off?
Mm-hmm.
If the wall or a certain amount of space has a shape of the wallpaper, the literal wallpaper behind it, this, or some form of that, then these shapes, these flowers I mean, you could still have framed things, but then those black and white shapes could appear to be coming from behind there as well, and could be part of the actual physical piece, even without the wallpaper. So
Like blend in.
Like your printing plates, your intaglios, like those as objects themselves are kind of interesting and could form frames or impressions that come off of it, or I mean, this work is very sculptural, and I think that's one of the elements that we've, even in your individual critique, that we never really talked about, because
you know what, I'll press paper clay into it tonight and just like have a low relief of it, and then just kind of like maybe slap that on something.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something there. There's like this,
yeah,
especially because like we were talking with Anna about this ideal of memory, and then like you're working with childhood memories, and we talk about this ideal of like a wallpaper in a room, and it's like you don't need an entire room to create the impression of a space, but once you put that frame on it and it's all blocked inside of that frame, I don't know, there's something less authentic about it in terms of who you are, and how your energy flows and stuff too. It's like you're not in a box, you're
I actually am. I'm living in a fucking trailer. I'm living in a converted garage that's 9 by 72. So it's kind of reflective of my life.
I'm speaking metaphorically. Like your personality isn't in a box. I mean, Mia said, I love the idea that I can totally picture it as an installation piece. And so I think sometimes by framing something, it isolates it, and your energy, like you could frame it and then have pieces that exist organically from the frame, or from that shape as well. So, and I think that adds like a sense of like, it gives it like a miniature installation sort of idea. So It doesn't need an entire room.
Thank you. All of this feedback is so helpful. It sounds like there's so many different directions that this could go.
Yeah,
I could put this on things. I could put this on walls. I could put this on like birthday presents. This is cool. This has options. I'm not
thinking of it as merchandising. I'm thinking of it as.
No, I know.
Okay.
I'm just having fun. I'm having a good time. This is like really helpful, and this is so meaningful too. The piece is so meaningful, but it's also like, I want to try to make the time that I'm making my art not so traumatic feeling, because reliving it all the time is exhausting.
Of course. Of course. Zahaba had your hand up.
Yeah, so actually following, I mean, I put my hand down because everybody was saying what I wanted to say, but there is one thing I want to still mention. If we look at the big image and then the one with the pattern, even though the elements are obviously the same, they look like two different bodies of work for me. One on the left looks like a commercial line, and the right looks artistic. And so unless you want to pursue it that way, which is okay, absolutely. And you can have two bodies of, I mean, one your art and one a commercial line, which is gorgeous, is a commercial line as well. combining them like many here have suggested, I think it's a fantastic idea. But yeah, I think that the way I'm looking at it right now, it looks to me like two separate lines.
Great, thank you.
Well, that is the end of the time. We didn't use all the time that we had, so if anybody wants to go back or has a question that's come up from one of the previous artists in the meantime, this is a good time to insert that.
I have a question for Gina, actually. In the white cloud-like space, in the big piece, there is another, yeah, what is that exactly? Like what does that represent?
It's a deflated balloon.
A deflated balloon?
Yes.
Oh,
And what is the significance?
Well, think about the layers that I'm working with and the colors. So my significance of the depth of these colors that I have is the coldness of a really fucking bitter cold pool in the summer under really, really, really shady trees. And I would jump into this pool as a kid. And so I'm playing with layers right now, and just kind of colors from my childhood. And I have two childhoods. I have one from before I moved the summer of first grade, and I have a childhood from after the summer of first grade. So I'm working with two different aspects of my life right now.
I think that's
And
very,
yeah, so
very, very interesting.
there's a little bit, yeah.
You can play with this rupture from one and the other, and it makes sense. For me, it makes sense now the pattern that you want to. So yes, I feel like I just want to say again that in this piece that Sahaba mentioned, that is more artistic and is more, you can play with the patterns with the same elements. You know what I mean or no? Mm-hmm.
And if you look in the folder, there's more patterns from just like the collage pieces that I've made. Yeah. And then I'm just, collaging them together even more.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
So,
beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
It's really beautiful, Gina.
So what I will do is I'm going to post these as divide them into 3 separate pages on the website. So the video will be there, and then I'll take the chat content from each of the different critiques and put that content there and turn on commenting so that you can comment. And then if any of the artists who are critique want to add an additional video explanation or something, you can send that directly to me, and then I'll post the video in there, because it's not possible to actually for you to post a video into the comment area. You can only write text into the comment area. So that way this conversation can continue as much as anyone wants to, and then I'll make sure to send out an email to the entire group so that they can then go into the commenting and continue the conversation with more observations or questions and things too. So so this ending right now is not an ending to the conversation necessarily. I'm super grateful for everybody participating and for the vulnerability that everyone has brought to the table in the process of critiquing, and the respect that everybody showed as well is super, super important. I hope the exercise was useful. If you're interested in participating in the next one, which would presumably be in the 3rd week of April, but when we don't have the art lab on Saturdays, I'll probably add at least one more critique into that. And then if you are interested in a solo critique where we can look at more of a body of your work, and only have you be the only subject of it, not sharing the time with 3 different artists, contact me directly and I'll we can talk about that process and how that happens as well too. Okay. Thank you everybody for participating. I want to stop sharing the screen, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it into gallery view. I think we have everybody there, and on 3, I'm going to take a photo of everybody on my other computer here. So 1, 2, 3. Very good. Thank you, everybody. It was this was a wonderful experiment. If you have any comments on how to make this flow smoother or add something additionally, send me an email too as well, so that we can evolve the process. But I'm very happy with how this went. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a great night.